and I'm also on a first name basis with you know what I'm saying?
Bet you date Fistina and Palmet pretty steady, don't you?
I have to admit, I've never seen this movie before, but this movie review was highly requested, so you know I had to do it. I see why y'all requested this after Vampire in Brooklyn, especially after seeing the end scene with Kay. But child, this movie was something serious. And for this to be a low budget movie from the 90s, it's really not that bad. Are some parts cringe? Yes, but overall, for this to be the first and last film from James Bond III, he didn't do too bad. But with that being said, while watching this movie with fresh eyes, you already know I noticed more than a few things. And now it's time to talk about it. So let's get into it. Listen, this movie starts off with the fuckery. We meet this bartender who is making a few calls to a special someone trying to secure his plans for the night. Just when he thought his plans were set in stone, he meets this lady, the temptress. And child, she was spitting straight honey.
Can I buy you a drink?
It's sort of against the house rules.
Well, then why don't you let me make you a drink at my house, under my rules?
Yeah, so dude wasted no time following up on that offer. So he goes to her place, her door was wide open, and the first thing he saw was a bed. So you already know what he was hoping for. And this guy.
You tell a lot about a woman by the kind of bed she sleeps in. Now this freaky bed says to me that you are one hot-natured freakazoid.
So they take it to the shower and things get a little spicy. Maybe a bit too spicy because the water in the shower turns to blood and old boy gets spooked and makes a run for it. And listen, they had this dude running all around this apartment, meat slanging all over the place. So you already know sex scene coordinators or whatever you call them were not a thing just yet. But then again, this was a low budget film, but they still could have gave dude something to cover his lower regions. But anyway, it was pretty much a wrap for this guy. We then go to North Carolina where we see this guy, Minister Garth, preaching to an empty church. The only person there is his son Joel. Suddenly, a woman in black appears in the back of the church and quickly makes her way to Joel. We then go to the minister telling Joel that he will be spending time with his grandma. We are then taken to the minister and his wife driving, and the same woman in black that we saw in the church earlier appears in the middle of the road. And the minister is determined to run her over. His wife tries to stop him, which leads to them crashing the car and dying. Now, Joel is left to be raised by his grandmother. Joel's grandmother tries her best to instill wisdom into Joel and gives him this warning.
When you are just one step away from reaching your goal, that actually is a crossroad, and it's up to you to look both ways.
We go back to New York, back to this bar. This guy, Dougie, is trying his best to spit some game, but this girl is not seeing it for him. It's here where we meet the temptress's next victim. She spotted him from the time he entered the door and knew this would be too easy. And this guy tries to impress her by offering to buy her some champagne. But see, his wallet and her expensive taste didn't quite match.
Do you serve Cristal here?
She asks him for his name and he gives her a fake one, but she guesses his real name, which shocks the hell out of him. She follows up with an offer to go to her place, and you know he fell right for it. Then we go back to Dougie, who should just give up already.
Well, he was trying to pick me up. He told me he was a surgeon.
I am a surgeon, you know, but I just I'm like a kung fu surgeon, you know, like I...
Old girl was not gonna let her friend fall for the okie doke. That's a real one. Anyway, we go back to the temptress and Mr. Norman, who are, well, you already know.
Yeah.
And child, Miss Temptress was turning him out. Got him thinking it was too good to be true. And you know it already was, because Miss Ma'am started cutting him up. But he was too caught up to know what was happening. We go to a vision or nightmare of sorts where we see the woman in black and Joel running in the middle of the street. We then go to Joel calling his cousin Kay, who lives in New York. He tells his cousin how he wants to go to New York to get away for a little bit and get from up under his grandmother's rules. Kay tells him that he's welcome to stay with him in New York and he's looking forward to seeing him. Then we go back to Mr. Norman, who is getting ready to go home and lie to his wife, but the temptress made sure that that wasn't going to be an option.
Bitch, what the hell's wrong with you? I mean, how am I supposed to explain this to my wife?
Why did he sound like Terrence Howard when he said that? Now, Mr. Norman is pissed because he got to go home and explain this to his wife because there's no hiding all that evidence. Norman is thinking clearly now, but it's much too late.
I mean, I just thought I could just walk away. I mean, just walk away. I don't want to lose my family.
We go back to this bar where this guy spots a possible love connection. The way he sat down and looked at him as if to say, I see you, boo. But unfortunately for him, this guy wasn't interested.
Tell me something. With all the men in this bar, am I really that obvious?
And then this guy had the nerve to make a request after this rejection.
If you still want to buy me that drink, I'll take a Remy Martin, please. $5 drink for my $2 man. Bitch.
And poor Dougie, he's still trying and failing miserably. So he strikes up a convo with the bartender about the temptress who is sitting at the bar again tonight. He starts talking about how his homeboy told him about his night with the temptress, but strangely enough, that's the last time he heard from him. Now, whole time, old dude from earlier is behind him, hearing all of this. I'm saying this for a reason. Wait for it. Dougie knows that something is not quite right with the temptress.
Something about her, man. I don't know what it is, but she's just weird. You know what I mean? She got them spooky eyes, man.
Now, this guy from earlier has made his way to the temptress. I guess what he heard earlier intrigued him instead of making him want to run in the other direction. But you know, can't save everybody. But of course, it doesn't take long for her to secure her plans for later on that night.
But with a woman, it's much better. At least with me.
Child. But the temptress spotted Kay from across the bar, and of course she had to put on her sexy face to draw him over to her, and it didn't take long. He comes over and she acts like she recognizes him from somewhere. He goes on to tell her that she may know him from the films that he's working on. She asks him for an autograph for her little brother that doesn't exist, and they go on to talk a little more. Child, she gave this man visions. Visions of them dancing, her feeding him fruit, and then them doing, the thing. He was lost in the sauce. So lost, she had to bring him right back down to earth. She tries to get him in the queue to be ravaged, but unfortunately for her, he had to go meet his cousin Joel. So Kay makes it home to find Joel waiting outside for him. Dude has just been sitting in the foyer, in the dark, waiting for this man. I would have been pissed, but they are excited to see each other. Joel promises that he's not there to judge him and he's only there to hang out and have a good time. So the next day, Joel and Kay are talking and Kay brings up the temptress from the bar. He tells Joel how she's so sweet and polite and how she's so fly to him. The whole time he's telling Joel this, we go back to the temptress doing what she does best to old boy from the bar and making him her next victim. These dudes are going out super sad. Anyway, Kay wants to introduce him to New York. So he planned to take him out on the town, but first things first, they had to address his fashions, or lack thereof. But after a few tries, this fit finally makes the cut. So we go back to Dougie, who's still at it.
I saw you in that magazine.
Yes, I was featured in.
Penthouse.
Right.
And they go back and forth for a hot second before she finishes him with this one.
And I'm also on a first name basis with Pussy, you know what I'm saying?
Bet you date Christina and Palmette pretty steady, don't you?
So Kay and his cousin make it to this bar where the temptress was already in attendance. Child, she prances on over to Joel to the shock of Kay, and she pulls this move.
Well, Joel, this is cute.
I'm sorry, I don't believe we've met before. In fact, I'm sure of it, but it's so nice to meet you.
She curved him so hard. Poor little Tink Tink. But Dougie comes over to give Kay a heads up about old girl. He tells him that she's bad news and how she creeps him out. Later, when Kay and Joel make it home, the energy is weird. Kay asks Joel about Miss Temptress and if he had a drink that night. He also asks him a hypothetical question to test if he was in the right headspace to resist temptation. Joel insists that he can take care of himself and doesn't need anyone to look out for him. And their little squabble doesn't escalate further, and they quickly make up. As we go to Joel's grandmother, looking at a picture of Joel and praying over him, we also see the temptress who says that Joel is the last in his bloodline, and once she gets him, it will all be over. I'm assuming there's a generational curse going on. So the next day, the temptress comes over, and again, she rubs salt in Kay's wounds.
I met you that one time at the club with Joel, right? What was your name again?
You got motherfucking amnesia now, huh?
And as he starts going off, he notices that she doesn't cast a reflection in the mirror. Now he's realizing there may be some truth to what Dougie was trying to tell him. And Kay runs back to the bar to tell Dougie about what he just saw. And Dougie insists that he may be exaggerating, but then he admits that he may be onto something. So they go to Dougie's spot so he could show Kay what he's found out so far. Apparently, there's been a string of guys who have fell prey to Miss Temptress. There was one instance where he interviewed a guy who swore he slept with the devil. And when this guy was about to tell Dougie who the Temptress was, snakes came out of his mouth. He was able to trace the Temptress back to the bar and has been watching her ever since. And Dougie asked Kay to help him catch Miss Temptress. So we go back to Joel on his date with the Temptress, and while they're talking, the Temptress lets it slip that he's a minister before he even tells her himself. She's able to gloss over it though, and they continue talking. We go back to Kay and Dougie as they seek assistance from this lady, Madame Sonia. She tells them that the Temptress is basically an ancient demon and seeks God and the good. She seeks to seduce the soul so that it remains in a lustful existence, to basically destroy it. The only way to beat this demon is for the person to resist them and dedicate themselves 100% to God. And Dougie was asking all the right questions.
Couldn't we lay the soul to rest if we decompose the body with holy water, then cut out the heart while it's still beating and bury it beneath hallowed ground?
That's some freaky shit.
But they didn't get a chance to get an answer because the Temptress was able to remote in to where they were and let them know that she was onto them. We go back to Joel's grandmother, who's having another nightmare where she sees Joel running into a bar where we see all the past victims of the Temptress. We see the woman in black inching closer and closer to him. We go back to Kay, who makes it home and immediately tells Joel about the Temptress. As he's talking to him, we see the Temptress jump up out of bed, a sign that she knows she's being talked about, and she don't like that. Kay tells Joel that if he's gonna be this naive over the Temptress, then he needs to go back home. Joel insists that he can take care of himself and that he's not gonna fall for the Temptress, but Kay doesn't believe him and insists that he take his wet behind the ears ass home. And Kay was serious about protecting Joel because he even snitches on him to their grandma. Baby, one thing for certain, two things for sure, grandma about to hit their prayer closet expeditiously. So Kay and Dougie convinced the bartender to spike the Temptress's drink, and this bartender was being very obvious, but she drinks it and immediately knows something's up because she starts hacking all over the place. Dougie and Kay come in and start taking the steps necessary to end the Temptress, but they weren't quick enough, and she quickly regains control.
You couldn't run
but she cannot.
Child, they come out the bar and Kay's car is now gone. These dummies fighting over which way to run. Like, are they clueless or something? Baby, pick a road and go. But they split up, and as you know, this never ends well. Dougie thinks he's found a getaway driver in the bartender, but really it was his last call, and the woman in black, aka the temptress, gets that ass. We go back to Kay, who's made it home. His front door is wide open. We then go to Joel, who's back at the temptress's lair, complaining about his cousin Kay. The temptress starts kissing him, and Joel's barely able to resist her, but he does. We go back to Kay, who's now starting to hear voices. Meanwhile, the temptress ups the ante by offering Joel wine, but Joel is able to resist that too, until the temptress spikes her own drink and kisses him, and he's down for the count. Turns out those voices that Kay was hearing was coming from his TV set. Now he's seeing himself on the screen, and as he comes closer to the TV, he gets sucked into the TV screen. Now, for this to be low budget, I ain't gonna lie, this was actually impressive for 1990. Anyway, Joel wakes up and notices he's in a bed laying next to the temptress. His dad walks in, and tell me why this is the first thing out of his mouth.
Fornicator.
You're supposed to be dead.
Well, at least he's aware. And then all of a sudden, Joel wakes up from this dream to see his grandmother, who's come out of their prayer closet ready to fight. But she's not quick enough and gets thrown across the room. The temptress turns into her final form and snatches up his grandmother, but not before his grandmother is able to give him some wise words.
We can win this, Joel. This is the test for your faith, Joel.
Joel is able to slide over to the bed, and he's taking his sweet, precious time too. Dude, she's strangling your grandmother. Put a little pep in your step. But he eventually makes it over to the Bible and the cross his grandmother dropped on the floor and casts out the demon that's the temptress. This lady went from a demon to an alien and back to a demon again. They didn't know what they wanted to do. But Joel is able to save himself and his grandmother, and now the curse is over. Then we see Kay in this limousine, child. Is this a prequel to Vampire in Brooklyn? Julius, we see you, sir. But that's pretty much the end of the movie. And here are my final thoughts. As I stated before, I hadn't seen this movie, but I have to admit that I really enjoyed watching it. But one of the things that bugged me about this movie was that we didn't get much backstory as to how the curse came about and why. We were given brief flashbacks, but that wasn't enough to establish why the temptress was after Joel in the first place. That would have really took this film up a notch for me. And for Joel to have been the main character, he was the least interesting. And again, that's probably due to the lack of backstory, but Kadeem and Bill carried this film. Dougie couldn't get a girl to save his life. It was almost like he was intentionally failing at flirting. It was quite tragic. And seeing Kay get all in his feelings about the temptress was hilarious. But it was cool how he was able to still look out for his cousin and try to protect him despite his jealousy. He basically sacrificed himself while trying to save his cousin. And of course, Cynthia did what needed to be done as well. She played this role to a T. The facial expressions, the way she emphasized words, her hair and makeup, she did that. Apparently, this was James Bond III's first and last film. There definitely could have been a sequel to this. I feel he would have went on to do great things if this was his first try at filmmaking. But one thing this movie made me realize is that there is nothing like a praying grandmother, and Joel had just that, which was always more than enough. But anyway, y'all, that's it for this review. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. As for the next review, all I'm gonna say is 1999, this was an indie MTV film, and child, this has got to be the messiest high school ever. And when I say messy, I mean messy. See you next time, you guys. Bye.